All right, John, I've got a question right out of the gate. If I blindfold you and strap a vibrating belt around your waist that buzzes every time you face north, how long before your brain just goes, cool, I can feel direction now?
Wasn't sure where you're going with that at first with the blindfold and vibrating belt, but
Fair, fair.
the short answer of how you can feel it's faster than you're comfortable with. A longer answer is your brain is already trying to do that with way less information.
That's unsettling. So hang on, you're telling me my brain is just sitting here waiting for weird gadgets to give me superpowers?
It's not waiting, it's begging. Your brain hates missing data. So give it a signal, any consistent signal, and it'll start rewriting the rules to make sense of it.
So this is like going from five senses to five and a half?
Yeah, exactly. Or even six, seven. There's really not a hard cap, I don't think. The brain isn't loyal to the source of the information, just the pattern of information.
Hold on. Oh, okay. So if I lose one sense, like vision, you're telling me I could reroute that through what? My tongue? My skin? My elbow?
All of the above. There are already systems out there that turn visual input into vibrations on your back or electrical signals on your tongue, and people can learn to see through those.
Great. So by the end of this episode, I'm either going to have a new superpower or trust my brain less than I already do.
Let's start the show.
Welcome back to John Teaches Sean About His Brain. I'm Sean, and as always, I'm here to have my mind expanded and occasionally melted by the one and only John. Now, usually on this show, we talk about how the brain handles the hand it was dealt. We've talked about memory, or why you get hangry, or why I can't remember where I put my keys, but I can remember every lyric to a song from 1998. But today we're going off menu. We are diving into the world of synthetic sensory substitution. Now, if that sounds like a deleted scene from a cyberpunk movie, it's actually just the ultimate biological hack. So we're talking about the brain's incredible ability to take data from places it was never meant to receive it from, like seeing through the touch of your tongue, or hearing through a vibrating vest on your back, or even sensing magnetic north like a migratory bird. Basically, John is going to try and convince me that my skin is just an eyeball that hasn't been properly briefed yet. He's going to explain why our brains don't actually care where the information comes from as long as it gets a consistent signal. Let's get into it. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
It is good seeing you, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
I loved that intro. That was good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, if you can't hear my, I would say excitement over this, I'm really interested to dive into this with you and figure out what it is we're actually talking about, because this is a brand new, all of this information is new to me. So
yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, actually. I love this.
really,
I love this topic. Yeah.
okay. So give me a 30,000 foot view of what we're talking about.
So it's just the idea that, we think our brains are built to do one thing. It's, and more than one thing, but each area just does one thing. Like one part of the brain sees something, one part of the brain hears something. But the brain is actually this bundle of information processors that take what it's been wired through genetics. It's wired to process certain types of information in certain ways. But if something happens, if you start giving it different information, it adapts to that. So it's a highly adaptive organ that just whatever you give it, it will adapt to it. And it's, we've said it so many times, but the brain is basically saying, is this what we're going to be doing a lot of? Because if so, we'll just rewire to make sure we're processing that more efficiently and faster and better. And so if you start giving it something new, it'll take that and run with it.
And I'll tell you, I still suffer from this. I try to remind myself, but we had a conversation, during the podcast about speech. And I'm glad I wasn't alone in this, where, I believe that there was one part of your brain that was responsible for speech. Right. And what we talked about was there's actually several anatomical parts of your brain that are involved in speech, not just one. And that was the beginning of, I keep going back to like this part of your brain does this, like the visual cortex that, uh, there's information that comes through your eyeballs through that we've talked about this physical energy goes down this path, gets processed at the visual cortex, and then boom, I can see. And that's, as usual with Sean, that's an oversimplification of how the brain works. And so this idea, right? Like your visual cortex doesn't technically need your eyes.
Right.
It just needs that electrical impulse that represents like data, spatial data. And so if we start there and say if that's what our starting point is, that you actually don't need your eyeballs to see. And we talked about blind sight a little bit. That was helpful for me too. But now we're talking about using technology to kind of, I mean, people use this term too much, like biohack or whatever. But uh, how does that work just for vision?
So you mentioned blind sight, which
Mhm.
is interesting because that's where somebody who reports themselves as being blind, like I can't see anything, but yet they behave as if they can see, and that's because part of their visual system has been disrupted, but not all of it. So the part of the information that travels down to the limbic system, what's called the low road, that's in the non-conscious brain, it can still process visual information and help you maneuver around furniture and things like that, even though you can't consciously see that. But now we're talking about somebody who's blind, that they're given a new source of information and now they report, oh, I can see now. So now they're saying I can see. And it's really interesting because, like you said, you don't need your eyeball to see. And I think I mentioned this before. The book that you usually say, you would think of this saying as being the seeing eye and the thinking brain, and the author flipped that to say the thinking eye and the seeing brain, which is a really cool way to flip it because that's how researchers in vision really look at it, as the seeing brain rather than the seeing eye, because that's what the brain does. It takes information and processes it. So when people started thinking of it in these terms, they decided to, they started looking at, well, if the cells in the brain can just process information, let's give it information and let's see what it does. And so Paul Bach-y-Rita is one of the kind of leaders of this. And I think this was, I'm trying to remember back from uh, some of my lectures years ago, but I think this is in the early 70s. He developed I think his first thing he did was he built a chair and put some vibrator, really tiny, small vibrators, and there's several hundred in the chair that a person would sit against and kind of lean their back against. And then I think it ended up being something they would kind of fasten to their back that would go right against their skin. And it was connected to a camera, and in the camera the visual field was broken up into a grid so that each vibration, each small vibrator in the chair represented that grid. So however many hundred vibrators you had, there were that many hundred grids. And when the grid would change light levels, like when everything was dark, the vibrators would stop, but as a grid became lighter and lighter, it would vibrate more and more till it would be like really intense vibrations at the highest light. So then it was just, the vibrators were just deciding when to vibrate and how much. And then that was on a person's back. And at
Mhm.
first, the person's like, yeah, it feels like a back massage. That feels good. And then, several days into it, they're starting to go, oh, and they're giving them information. Like they'll put things like a board will move across in front of them, just one straight line, vertical line, or a horizontal line will move up and down. And they started out just training this. And I think it was a few weeks in, people started saying, oh, wait, initially they would say, oh, I feel something. I feel like something moved across my back. But at some point there was a change where they went, oh, it's like their brain did the flip and went, what you're feeling on your back is actually out in the world in front of you. And they started connecting that together, and pretty soon people started saying, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. I see you're doing, you're moving a board across, you're moving something straight across in front of me, or up and down. And then they started showing them objects, and they found out they could start identifying different objects just by the vibration on their back. And at that point, the people weren't feeling like their back was being vibrated. They felt like they were seeing something in front of them, which is crazy.
Yeah. I was quiet because I'm just trying to process that. I like it. It actually makes sense to me what you're saying, but in the same on this, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to reconcile those two things of like, I get it. I don't want to. This is a bad analogy, but I don't want to think of my brain like a monitor, like what I'm looking at right now to see you. But what you're describing is kind of like a computer monitor,
Yeah,
and that
maybe
part's
think of the chair back, or the back of the chair as being the monitor.
okay. I like that better. I like that much better because so when you said you wanted to talk about this topic, I did a little bit of research and I found this thing. It's called the brain port, and that device converts camera images into electrical bubbles on the tongue.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah.
data that I saw, the research said that again, blind users, you kind of already covered that, but I'll just say blind users have reported seeing doorways and 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 even able to catch balls using only their taste buds.
Yeah. I don't think they caught the balls with their taste buds, but they use their taste buds to see the ball so they could catch it with
Right,
their, yeah,
right. You're using that information to be able to catch an
yeah,
object,
yes. Isn't
and
that crazy?
yeah, but it led me to a question. Like the first thing when I read that is what I wanted to ask you, and this is more philosophical, I think, now that I'm thinking about it. But if a blind person sees via their tongue, are they actually seeing, like the experience of light and physical energy, or just getting really good at the sense of feeling of touch?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that splits the definitions of sensation and perception. So sensation is what your tongue is taking in, or what your eyes take in when you convert physical energy into neural energy. So that's the energy that your brain uses. That's a sensation. But then when your brain makes sense out of it and says that's a ball and I need to catch it, that's the perception side. So we
Okay,
tend to think that perception is just all that the brain does, is the perception side.
I
But
do.
it's
Yeah,
really
that's how
two
I thought.
stages.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the
yeah.
two stages, and you have to sense it, and then your brain has to build something out of that. And one of the parts of the Baccarita story that I really like is he reported, and I watched videos of this because he videoed this, some of his research. And I
Hmm.
watched some of the videos of his early research. This is when I was in college as an undergrad, so this was a long time ago. But he said one of the participants, a blind participant in the study, was sitting there with, at this point, they had like it wasn't a poncho, but it was kind of like like in old movies of like old Rome where they have the metal breastplate, but it was
Hmm.
flipped around back. It was on the back. The person would kind of hunker into that plate going on the back. I think it was made of rubber or something. But anyway, uh, the person was watching, and they tried something new they'd never tried before. They told the audience through the camera that they were going to try something new, and they had a lit candle that they put in front of the person, and the person was like, wait, what is that?" And was looking at, "Oh, that's different. Oh." And so they was at, so he explained kind of what the object was, and they said, "That's a candle. That's a candle that's lit." And the person just sat there for a minute. He said, "I didn't know fire moved." So you think about a blind person, they know fire is hot, but they didn't know
Right.
that a candle flame would move.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, to me, that made a huge impression, because that was the evidence that, yeah, they are seeing something on their back. If they're detecting this, they said, "I didn't know fire moved." It's like, yeah, you're getting it now. You're seeing something. So it's taking that sensation, converting it into neural energy, and then telling the brain, "Here, figure this out." And then the brain calculates and calculates and works and works, and it takes some time, but then the brain like figures it out, and now it becomes a perception.
Right. So I've really out of, I mean, we're just getting started in here, but we can quit now if you want. Cause what I, the idea of what you said to it made, it just helped me so much with breaking it into the two things. So the
Okay.
difference between sensory and perception, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I did this, but I just categorized everything under perception. It's
Everybody
all,
does. That's yeah, and that's what makes intuitive sense is that
yeah,
the light comes in, you see it, you see the object. So, but there's really two steps to it.
yes,
That those are the two kind of the two general steps. There's a lot of steps in each one of those, but those are the
yeah.
two categories, I should
Right,
say.
but for this conversation, that what you started with just is helping reframe, for me anyway, reframe this whole topic. Because the other thing I was going to bring up was I also stumbled on this thing called the VEST, a versatile extrasensory transducer. And I don't know if you've heard of that, but I think it's similar to what you described, but this is for deaf individuals. It created by David Eagleman.
Oh, okay.
And the vest, oh, do you know who that is?
I know David Eagleman. Yes.
I don't know who that is, but it says it converts sound into vibrations on the vest, and it's
Ah.
similar to what you described, right? Like, it's on the back.
Mm-hmm.
It's on their torso, actually, sorry. Deaf individuals can learn to
Okay.
hear by, interpreting the patterns of buzzes on their torso.
Okay. That's cool.
And so
Yeah.
we're back to the idea, what I was rambling about before is like perceiving, or I mean, sensing those buzzes and the different buzzes, and then turning that your brain figuring out what those buzzes mean, and perceiving sound in the
Yeah.
world through the buzzes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, Eagleman is credited with same because he was doing a lot of this sensory substitution research, and he was trying a lot of different things. He's kind of a leader in it, but one of his things he's known for, he said something like, you don't see a photon. So like the light coming in for vision, like, well, how do you think you're going to get somebody to see with something on your tongue or something on your back? It should be your eye. And he's like, your eye just takes in photons of light. Like your brain never sees the photon. That's just what starts the chain rolling, and that's what gives the brain some neural information through neural energy. And it never sees the photon. That's just what gets the chain rolling. So we can get the chain rolling with other things.
Doesn't, I mean, and so why the tongue? Is
So
there,
the tongue, that is the part of the body that has a ton of sensors in it. And so
oh, yeah.
not every part of your body has an equal number of sensors. And there's something called the pencil test. So I'm just going to grab these two, where you take two pencils. These are pens. You can take pens or pencils, but you hold them kind of together so that when you touch something, the point of it touches at the same time.
Hmm.
And then you have somebody close their eyes and you touch their forearm with the pencil. And sometimes you touch with one and sometimes you touch with two, and you just have them say out loud one or two. And as you get closer and closer, there will come a time where you can put two down there and they'll just say one, because they only feel like one pencil touched. Because in the arm, a sensory nerve has an area that it covers. Like, I'm going to cover this area. So anything in this area, I'm going to respond and say, yes, this area was just touched. And then there's one by, and they're overlapping to a degree, but there's one, close by. But if you hit it just right, it just responds. Even if you touch with two, sends one response, I was touched, and there's none other. If you spread it out, now you have two different nerves saying I was touched, and those go in and your brain goes, oh, there must have been two things that touched it. And so when you do this on your forearm, you have to be really close together. The pencils have to be really close together for you to say that was just one when both of them touch. On
Hmm.
your back, they can be like, depending on how you hit it, they could be like 2 inches apart and it still feels like just one thing touching, because there's not nearly as many receptors, skin receptors for touch receptors in your back. If you cross the spinal cord, you can get really close because that's two different areas sending a signal. So just stay on one side of the back, one side or the other of the spinal cord, and you can get it fairly far apart. And if you find an area they have to be close apart, that means you're coming at one of those overlapping zones. So just move over a little bit and try it again. But the tongue and the lips especially, I think even more than the tongue, are very discriminate, and you almost can't fool the lips on the pencil test. And people don't use an actual, when researchers are doing this, not actually using a pencil. There's little devices you can calibrate to be close together or further apart. But the point is, the lips aren't enough surface area for some of this stuff, but the tongue also has sensors that are really close together. So you can you just let it rest on the tongue and it goes, it's like, do you remember Pop Rocks? I've been told by somebody, it's like having Pop Rocks in your mouth. But then you eventually adapt to that. So here's another story that's not sensory substitution, but I think it will help explain this. There's glasses that you can put on that have mirrors, like two sets of mirrors that flip the world upside down. And actually what they're doing is flipping the world right. So right now, when you look at something, the lens of your eye inverts everything. And so what lands on your retina is an upside down world. So you can put on glasses to flip the world upside down so that when it comes through your lens, it lands on your retina right side up. Mm-hmm. But your perception is the world's upside down because normally you're seeing it upside down in your retina. So it's been flipped. So now you say the world's upside down, and it's really hard to even walk through your house with glasses like that on. And a researcher did this and said, this was also, I think, in the 60s or 70s, said, I'm going to wear these glasses to figure out like what happens in my brain after, I don't even know what her plan was. I think it was like after a month. I'm going to try to wear these I think she said, I'm going to wear these as long as I can until I can't take it anymore, but and she stayed in a house with curtains really, really drawn. So it was a really dark room so that when she would go to bed, her house wasn't, her bedroom was, so that when she would go to bed, she would make sure it's completely dark. She would turn the light out, and then in the dark, she would take the glasses off and lay them on the stand. And when she woke up, she would put them on before she turned the light on, so that she was trying to make sure she didn't ever see the world the normal way, and was just going to see what happened. And there's videos of her trying to pour tea, and she's missing because the pot's pouring under the cup. She can't get it's funny to watch. And I think it was after 3 or 4 days, I can't remember the number of days, but after a certain number of days, she said she woke up, put the glasses on, turned the light on to walk in the other room, and her whole world made sense to her. And it wasn't that, I don't think, if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't that the world had flipped for her. Like she saw it like it was, and it made total sense, and she could maneuver through it, and she could showed her pouring tea and taking a drink, showed her getting on a bicycle, riding a bike. Everything made sense. And she kept it on for, I think, another day or two. And when she took them off, nothing made sense again. Like now all of a sudden I'm seeing the world like I always have, and it didn't make sense again. And she couldn't pour tea and she couldn't do things, but that only lasted a few hours. And then her brain was like, oh yeah, we've seen this before. And it shifted around, and then it made sense to her. And when she would put the glasses back on, it would take a little bit, but then it would reshift. So it's just your brain says, if this is the information you're giving me, then I'm just going to figure out how to use it. And we're going to utilize this information. So if it's coming from the tongue, the back, if your glasses are flipping things upside down, you can do a lot of things, and the brain will still figure it out. If it's a consistent signal, it has to be consistent.
That's, consistent pattern.
Consistent pattern of information. Yeah.
Okay.
Over an extended time.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So I think I have a good starting spot here. So now let's get into the crazy stuff. Because
there's crazier stuff than this.
Well, theoretically, could I see heat signatures or UV rays through what we're talking about? Couldn't I make my brain with the right technology see those things?
I don't think. Okay. So yeah, let me shift my brain. My brain's
I told you I was going to get crazy here.
Yeah, this is getting crazy. So let me shift my brain. So now we're not talking about replacing you're saying if you had, so you would have to have a device that can measure whatever you're wanting. So did you say infrared? What did you say again?
I mean, heat or
Heat
UV.
signatures. Yeah.
Listen, I'm obsessed with seeing like Predator. I've talked about it every time we talk about vision, but
Yeah.
yes. So we're not talking about a current sense or ability that I have, right? Vision,
Yes.
hearing, all of that. I'm saying because what sparked this is you're talking about this researcher who used glasses to invert the view of the world, right? But and again, I know I'm a lunatic. Maybe I'm going too far off here, but
So
like
you'd be a great researcher.
if there was a way to have there's tech that
Mm-hmm.
over a consistent pattern fed to my brain where I only see the world in heat signatures.
So if, oh, I'm starting to say if you wore night vision goggles, but that's already seen it. That's using your eyes. Are you talking about if you had a like heat signature that you put on your tongue?
Oh, I wasn't talking about that, but now, yeah, okay, that is
Because then
even
your
better.
brain's having to do something with it. If you put on night vision goggles, they're already converting the heat
Right.
signature that your brain just uses its visual system to see it. But now you're saying, let's take those night vision goggles and figure out how to put that, like that's the screen now that goes on your tongue
I
or
put
on your
that
back.
pad on my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like based on the description of what you said about the tongue, and I'm glad that you said that as well, is like the tongue is sensitive and critical about what it's taking in, I'm assuming. And so I put that little pad on my tongue that can see uh heat signature UV.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
And then I don't know what the time frame is, but a long enough, a consistent pattern that's feeding my brain that information. Could
I
I
want to
see
go
like
try that.
Predator?
I want
I
to go
just
do that now. I want to try it because yeah, that would work. See, that's what I'm saying. You'd be a good researcher because the 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 best part of research, the hardest part sometimes, but the best part is coming up with the interesting questions to ask. So that I love that question, and that's doable because you could take the tongue device. Do you call it brain port, or is that something different?
what was Brainport was yeah,
Anyway,
Brainport.
what? Okay,
Yeah.
brain port. If you take that, like, let's buy a brain port device and let's hook it to infrared camera. Let's
Yeah.
see what happens because then
That's
you could start. You would still have to have a consistent input though. You don't have the sensory system to pick it up, but as long as you had a camera nearby, I guess it'd be easier just to wear the glasses, but night vision goggles. But yeah, it should you should be able to start seeing that
but
perceptually through your tongue.
night vision is infrared, right?
That's
Is that
true. Yeah, yeah.
okay?
But the
Listen, I would
infrared
take
picks up
infrared.
heat signals.
Right, right. I'll take infrared. So if I could just get because in law enforcement, in the military, they use FLIR,
Hmm.
forward looking infrared. And so if you see like on cops or footage of infrared, the product, I think it's a brand name, but they use FLIR. So if I could get glasses that have FLIR in the glasses, and I just wore those for like 2 weeks, and that message sent data to the pad on my tongue, I think if I took the glasses off, I could see in infrared. That's my hypothesis that I'm going to research. And we just got to buy a brain port. So listen, I'm on a roll. Let's take this a step further.
No,
Um,
there's a further
oh,
step.
oh yeah. I mean, in my brain there is.
Okay, I want to hear
Um,
it. Let's go.
think about this. If you could take let's say like the vest and a wristband together and have those things receive live data streams from the internet. And so now my skin is receiving the internet. So
What does that
I'm
mean, receiving the internet? Like
well, I mean,
you're
could I
getting
use sensory
tweets and
substitution? I mean, yes. to feel invisible data that's on the internet.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna jump to the spoiler alert. They're doing this. I found this product called Neosensory, and users are being trained to feel the real time movement of the stock market. And then in another one, they're even being they can feel the mood of X as a series of pulses against their skin, in their wrist and their back.
So what would the pulse rhythm be for something that's really dark?
Ooh, I don't
That
know.
That would probably be the pulse rhythm you're feeling. It doesn't change, doesn't it? Doesn't X always stay pretty dark? It's
Well, yeah.
pretty depressing, and
I don't know why they're using X in their research, but
they might have been funded through X.
Oh boy, yeah, you were probably not wrong. TerraFab or whatever he's doing now, but again, through this mixture of my wristband and the vest that I'm wearing, those signals hitting my skin are feeding me data from the internet. That I mean, I can predict movement in the stock market based on feelings through my skin.
That one's really cool to hear about, to think about the stock market. So you're feeling the market move.
Yes, that's what it says.
So you could have this device on, and if you're tied into the stock market, if you're following stuff, you could be going about your job, doing other things, and just all of a sudden know when you need to check back in to buy or sell or whatever.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I feel a tingle on my wrist, and it says I need to do something with the stock market.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, last crazy one. Maybe not last one, but I mean, these are all the things that are in my head.
Percolating in your brain.
Yeah, because this one's actually not that as crazy as the other two, but I was thinking about echolocation. Right? Like using sonar like a bat does. Because you've described this on previous shows.
Yep. A bat sees with its ears.
Yeah. And so taking a blind individual and then giving them these clicks on the brain. And it's not their ears, I don't think. But that's what I wanted to ask you is like they're getting these dots or these little things, clicks on their tongues that tell them the direction that they should be going. So they're not hearing the distance, right? They're seeing with sound. Is that I'm trying to figure that part out in my head. So can you tell me again about echolocation in bats?
Yeah. So bats will send out a really high screech sound, like one after another, and that leaves, and when it hits an object, it bounces back and their ears pick it up, and their brain does a calculation between when they sent it out and when their ear picked it back up to let them know distance. And then, like, if you have a tree you're flying towards, the very center of that tree will return faster than the sides of the tree, and that kind of gets bounced a different way anyway. So you're here, so you can start to see dimensionally what's happening. Or if you give out a scream and it comes back and then it comes back again a little bit slower, there's something right behind it. And the calculations seem just too hard to figure out. Like when you try to sit and write this all out, like this would be so difficult to line this all up, but their little bat brains, as small as they are, have the calculations down to where they can fly through the air, fly through tree branches, miss all of it, and catch a little moth that's fluttering in the air, where just fly through, catch it, and keep going. And that's, how moths kind of just bounce and fly. You never know where if you ever try to catch a moth, it's almost impossible. And the bat will swoop down, do these weird, and just grab it and be gone. That's all with and here's the difference. Their screeches that they give out to hear are the hertz for that is at a level well above what we can hear. So we're like between 2,000 and 20,000 hertz, and their screeches are like, I think at like 50,000 hertz. I can't remember exactly, but it's outside. So we don't hear them, but you can think about in the bat world is pretty noisy out of nights when they're out all out hunting, and
Hmm.
you've got to then discriminate your screech from the other bats' screeches. And I can't believe their little bat brain can do all those calculations, but that's what brains do.
I read yesterday and I forgot the number, but I can tell you that the number was staggering of how many bats are underneath this bridge in Austin, Texas. Like it was like 1 million bats.
Yeah.
And so what you were just saying is like if there's, even a couple of hundred bats all using this screech, and I like that you said that part too, because I always think about a lone bat out there hunting.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, what if there's like 5 of us out there and we're all using this screech,
We're all
you know,
screaming.
we're all screaming, and man, I'd fly into a tree, I think. But okay, so you described the echolocation in a bat, right? And now do you see a little bit of my confusion about, and again, I think I'm trying to put too fine of a point on it, but for humans, if we were using, something like this echolocation, um, that the the brain is getting these clicks on the tongue, and so is that seeing or is that hearing or is it both?
Well, so I think if you're going to do that, you would have to have also the little pad on your tongue would have to be connected to something else. So like usually it's connected to a camera. In
Hmm.
this case, it would have to be connected to a sound emitter and a sound receiver. So it would emit sounds and receive sounds and then convert that into what it sends to your tongue. And then that would
Okay.
still be seeing because your brain will calculate the distance, and maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would end up being hearing because our auditory cortex is not as developed. It's not as large as the visual cortex. The visual cortex dominates the brain of all the senses, but the auditory cortex is large and comparatively. Um, it might also start using that for sound. I don't know. That's what would be interesting. And
Yeah.
here's the interesting part, because if you lose a part of your brain that's been doing something for 50 years and you lose that part of your brain, it's probably going to try to pick up and do something else to pick up the slack. So it can learn to do something else. So just like, people who lose a limb, we've
Yep.
talked about that, like phantom limb. Their brain that used to process information from there is still trying to process stuff. So it'll connect to receptors from the face. And if the wind blows, it feels like you get that phantom limb thing because it's still trying to process information. So that would be really interesting to see. You
So
know, you,
that's Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry.
well,
Go
you were
ahead.
talking about Eagleman earlier. He and a colleague, I can't remember his colleague's name off the top of my head, but they came up with a theory because the brain is so plastic like that. It can change. It really doesn't care that much what the information is. The brain doesn't care. I mean, it's
Mhm.
we care. The brain doesn't care. It's going, just give me some information and I'll figure it out. And that's why if you stop speaking your native language, your native tongue, you'll learn a new one. You'll forget your native tongue because the brain doesn't care about that. It doesn't have like that sentimental side that's like, I've got to always remember to do this. It's like, no, whatever next is, that's what I'm doing. So they obviously understood this because they're building all the sensory substitution technology. And they came up with the theory. We were always talking about, why do we dream? So their theory about why we dream and why animals, humans and non-human animals, dream is because it's a some kind, and I can't remember the theory. It's a defensive theory. I think it was defensive something theory. It doesn't matter. They had a theory that we dream as a way to protect the visual system, because if you have 8 hours out of your 24-hour day that some other part of your brain can start, it'll start using that, and then pretty soon you'll lose some of your visual capabilities. So if you dream in pictures and things like that, it keeps the visual cortex just focused in on vision. And I mean, not that I agree with that, but I thought that was an interesting theory, and it's based on this idea of how plastic the brain is.
Yeah. that because you dream during REM, right? And
Yes,
if I'm in REM and not dreaming, I'm just restating your point, but my brain will look for something else to do, and if I do that enough, then my vision is going to degrade. That's the theory.
that's the theory. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so I want to go back before I lose my thought. Is we
Okay.
talked about echolocation,
Yes.
but there's another, and I'm going to get to my point, but I'm going to drag you down this road here of magnetoreception.
Mm,
Um, and right,
yeah.
so how do migratory birds that fly south, right?
Yeah.
There's turtles. I mean, I don't know that much about the topic, but I know that there are animals in the world that use this sense
Mhm.
to find their way,
Yes.
right? And it's based on uh, the the ability to detect Earth's magnetic field for navigation, orientation, migration, all that, right? And so, I mean, I think you've already covered this, but uh, we could train humans to use that for orientation using all the same thing we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Using the,
Potentially. I mean,
or,
potentially, yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, so you could kind of feel north. You
yeah.
just have this sense of I know where north is based on this feeling I'm getting. Yeah.
So, like,
It
think about you have your phone, if you're using maps or you're using compass or whatever, when you move your phone, the needle just kind of stays at at magnetic north, not true north, magnetic north. And if you had something attached to you for, again, however many days or weeks, I don't know, that every time you're facing north, it gives you something. And then in theory, my theory anyway, maybe I should try to get funding and go into research here. But that's probably the craziest thing I've said during this podcast. That's not, I don't mean that. But
no, I
but
think you should. I'm
but
all for
again,
it.
when I take the vest off or whatever the thing is, that in theory my brain can always find magnetic north,
Yeah.
right?
Uh
Or no?
I think you would still have to have no, you'd still have to have that device connected. But if you could have it as a little implant,
Oh,
somewhere, like just somewhere on your body, a little implant that could detect that and signal. You could start feeling that. It wouldn't feel like a buzz or vibration. It would just be. It would initially it would, but then it would be just another piece of information your brain is getting that says that's north and this is south. And you just have that feeling of, oh, I'm heading north now. Oh, I'm heading south, without feeling that it's buzzing or whatever. But it still has to have. It's still so. Think of the buzzers, the thing on your tongue, and as being another sensory organ. You still need the sensory organ. You have to have a way to sense it, and
right.
then your brain will create the perception.
I think you're missing my overall intent here. I'm trying to build a superpower. I don't want to implant something. Do you understand? I'm trying to train my brain
Yeah, I'm
to,
sorry.
and I think you're dashing all of my hopes right
Yeah,
now with this. I'm trying to use this technology to train my brain to do it by itself.
yeah. I think you're going to have to figure out how to leapfrog
I
over
don't love this for
sensation.
me.
But listen to this. If Even if you have an implant to now detect direction,
Huh?
I mean, how is an implant that different from an eyeball or an ear? It's still gathering information from the world and sending it to your brain. So now you didn't evolve that sensory that sensory object, but if you give it to your brain, then what's the boundary now between biology and technology? I mean, that's what's always fascinating to me. Like if you can add a little bit of technology in, now that starts to blur the lines about, you know, just between biology and technology and what we are and who we are. And I love these thought questions like this.
I know, but emotionally, so in my heart, I'm a Luddite. In reality, I'm not. But I need my
You're
phone and I
Batman
need
and
the
you're wanting to
internet.
be Superman.
Yes, this, yes. That's you know what? That actually was a perfect analogy. That is
Of the person who always knows everything about movies and quoting them, I came up with the movie analogy. I
yeah,
like
that
that.
was great. But I mean, listen, I'm not Batman. I'm not rich, debonair. I don't have any of those qualities. I'm just not
But we would be
superhuman.
doing this research.
Yeah, if I was Bruce Wayne, we wouldn't even be talking about this. I would just update you on
Wayne
all the research I'm
Enterprises, you
doing.
just hire people to figure all this out.
Absolutely. But in again, researching for this episode, and I'm just throwing this out to you just to see what you think, but I found two articles actually, but there was some hint of that humans at one point in our existence actually had the ability for magnetoreception. And because we didn't need it anymore at some point in our evolution
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
where we are now, and the brain just kind of turned it off.
Yeah.
Have you heard that, or what do you think
Yeah.
about that theory?
No, yeah, I've heard that theory.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay. Listen, I got to test all my lunatic ideas against you. That's what
No, I've heard. I mean, like we're talking millions of years ago.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
But whether, I mean, why? So if we did have it, why, in your opinion, would we stop using it?
I
What do
think
you
it's
think?
the migratory
We
part
just settled.
of,
We
yeah,
settled
humans started
somewhere.
settling.
Generations of us are just, this is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And
We don't need that anymore.
My
Yeah.
Scandinavians made it far enough north and somehow liked the snow and
To
didn't
get
want to
away
leave.
from, we got to get away from, this is far. Nobody comes up here to see us or visit us.
Yeah. And then, at some point they didn't like it enough that they started building boats and venturing out. But
Yeah.
still, even I've said this, I think before, my people left, the Scandinavian countries and made it to Minnesota, and they were like, yep, this is home.
This
I'm
is
like,
home. I'm staying.
well, why did you, it's almost the same as where you just came from.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Anyway, so I like what you said though, is that, so we stopped, the migration. We just stopped, we settled somewhere. And so you actually don't need this magnetoreception anymore. And the brain just found something else to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. If you're not using it, then the brain will say, well, then give me some other types of information and I'll start using it.
Wonder what it replaced that with. I know there's no
that's a
way to
good
know
question.
that. It's just curious something had to replace it. But yeah, anyway, I love that you have heard that theory and that it's not that crazy of a theory, that there was a time in the world that a human being had the ability to know where the Earth's gravitation, or a magnetic field, and can use it to navigate.
I mean, other vertebrates have that.
Yeah. Yeah. I read, like I said, the two I remember, birds, turtles, man, I can't remember the other ones I read, but that have this ability. So
Whales.
They do?
Whales do.
I didn't remember reading that.
Because they migrate across the ocean and
would have to know.
They have to know where, yeah. Because when you get out in the ocean, it's really big. You get turned around really fast.
It has happened. If you get far enough away from the shoreline, you kind of look out and go, I don't know. If I didn't have the GPS in the boat,
yeah.
And I talked about my Scandinavians. I do not
they
do
would
them
be
justice
ashamed right now.
They would be ashamed of me right now. I'm sure they are for many reasons, but
if you're not looking at the Big Dipper, they are really disappointed in you.
Yeah, I know.
But here's something else that I thought of while you were talking, that there's been people, I'm going back to sensory substitution though.
Yes, thank you for bringing us back to this. Thank you.
So some blind people will have sensory substitution devices, images to, that they can see, and they report that they're I think this talks about gets to what I was starting to talk about earlier, but their auditory cortex will pick up on it and also process it to some degree. So just because it's visual information doesn't mean that it can only go to one part of the brain. It can go to multiple parts. It usually is that the visual system picks it up because it's kind of built for spatial information like that. But auditory can also be spatial. And so they have a type of, we talked about synesthesia in another episode before, where you
Mm-hmm.
can taste sound and different things like that. They have what's sometimes referred to as synthetic synesthesia. That's, you have to slow down to say that because that's hard. Synthetic
Yeah.
synesthesia, but it's where they are that stays with them after they take the device off. So now they're riding in their car somewhere, and sounds like turning on the radio, they'll start getting visual experiences from that, just based on what they've been training their brain to do. That it's kind of a crossover of the sensory systems, which is kind of interesting. I find that fascinating as
Synthetic
well.
synesthesia.
Hmm.
Not born with it, but you can create it.
They
Look,
created it through this, yeah.
I feel like the answer is going to make me feel even dumber than I feel, but how is auditory information spatial? How is that?
It's because a sound will arrive, if it's coming from the right side, it'll arrive at your right ear sooner than your left ear. So you can get a directional sense, and then you can also, um, if it's a weaker sound when it gets to you, or a stronger sound, you a little bit of a distance feel. So you can get a little bit of location and distance, but not much. Not like you do with visual, but
Yeah.
it's still there.
So I have a little bit of echolocation. It's just really weak.
Yeah, yes. So it's just location without the echo. You're
Yeah.
not sending a signal
Yeah.
out. But yeah, so you're getting some of that, like sonar maybe. Yeah.
Sonar. Yeah.
Well, sonar is the same. The submarines, where I always think of it, they send out the pulse and measure
And
it
then it
coming
comes
back.
back. Yeah. And so based on how long it takes to travel, the
So,
direction, they can ping another, sub or anything like
and they point it. They find, oh, we've locked in on something, so they're pointing it and sending the ping, and it's coming back. And that idea, from what I remember, that idea when they developed sonar was from bats, understanding
that
how
makes sense.
bats see.
I learned all of this from the Hunt for Red October, by the way. So,
Oh, that was
I learned all of my
Sean
stuff from
Connery.
movies. Yes. Um, oh no, that I made a joke and I lost my thought.
We're talking about
Oh,
sonar.
yeah, no. Actually, my thought was, I just wanted to bring up for you to comment on one of the things that I read, going back to the tongue, is the blind people in the study that were receiving of, the thing through the tongue, that after long enough, it was reported that their language started to change about how they taste things. So the language, I should have looked that up. Now I'm going to bungle this, but the language that they started to use was visual language
About
about,
how things
uh,
tasted.
yes, yes.
That's another type of synesthesia. So that's another synthetic synesthesia.
It was when you brought that up that it reminded me that
Yeah.
I found that part interesting, that the way that we talk about, uh, taste, things that we put in
Hmm.
our mouth and all of that, that language changed to skew more visual. So synthetic
That's cool.
synesthesia again.
That's
So
cool. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
The
Okay.
brain is amazing. The brain is so amazing. It's you could spend your whole life studying it. I mean,
Well, I know
just
a guy who has.
getting up every day is, I mean, even more than, just like dedicate your life to studying it, where it's
Yeah.
every morning, that's all you do, and you wouldn't even be scraping the surface, really. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like reading about what other people are studying, because there's
Is
more getting done that way.
isn't it is I mean, it's the whole point of why I wanted to do this podcast with you. And we're however many episodes into this thing, and sitting here having this conversation, and I'm again learning so much and thinking about things in a different way, which I say every week. Selfishly, it's what I care about. I learned a whole bunch of stuff, and it's reframing the way that I think about my brain, the way I sense things, how they're perceived. It's just really cool. I wish I had a better word for it. It's really cool.
It is. It's
And
amazing.
to have, I don't know, it's like, I know that we all have brains and they're all unique, but to sit here and think about, I have this thing floating in liquid inside my cranium that is just like, it's just so amazing. And we don't even fully understand it yet.
No, not even close.
But what we understand about it if we just take the last hour of what you and I talked about, it's just like, how 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 did this thing end up doing all that it can do? It's just so amazing to
It is crazy.
so amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I appreciate, as always, the time that you spent. There's a couple of things you had to circle back on for me today, so I try to avoid that when I can. But I appreciate you taking the time to educate me on some things, remind me of some things. So thank you for that.
Oh no, still, I still need to be. There's so many times I'll start thinking about the brain and certain things, and I'll start wandering a little bit, like WAND, wandering off
Hmm.
the line that I know, and then I'll remember something's like, oh yeah, that brings me back. And so I think we all have to do that in anything that we're doing. We have to just try to. It's fun to let your mind start going and thinking about things, but then you have to sometimes readjust a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's what we all do, but that's the fun part of it. I mean, I loved the part where you were asking the different things we could do, because I'll be honest, I've never thought of having like infrared vision camera connected to the little tongue patch. That's a really cool idea.
It's
To
all I
start
think
doing
about.
different things like that. Yeah, that's
I just want to
I
see
love
like
that.
Predator. It's all I think about all the time. That's a joke. That's not all I think about. Um, but it it is it's I'm a little so I was going to wrap up, but now you got me talking again. But when I was making the joke about technology, like I'm a little bit freaked out. You brought up Elon Musk, and he's not the only one, but he wants to implant a chip in my head that connects to the internet.
Neuralink or something like that.
Neuralink,
Neuralink.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what it's called. I didn't want to promote him or his product, but but again, that the
Sorry.
idea freaks me out a little bit.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to skirt the edges here, half joking about I want to train my brain to have superpowers, but the idea of implanting something is still a little bit scary for me,
Hmm.
and I don't know if I would do it. I'll take what I got. Um, but maybe I don't know.
Uh,
Down the road, maybe it'll be so amazing that I can't not do it. I
do
don't
you have
know.
Meta glasses yet?
I don't see. That's another thing. Is like I don't want glasses that connect to the internet, and have a
Yeah.
camera in them and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can't put
So
I can't put my phone down,
just
you
think
know?
about, so what we said today was that the brain is basically, we're saying the brain is craving information. And if you give it information, it'll figure out something to do with it. And artificial intelligence craves information. And when we give it information, it can end up doing things that we never have even dreamed of or thought of. So when you're wearing Meta glasses or Neuralink in the head, those things are giving AI just unlimited, not unlimited, but nearly limitless amounts of information. So yeah, that is scary on one side, because if you're doing it for your brain, that's kind of contained. So
Mhm.
one
Yeah.
person is experiencing that. But if you're giving it to externally to an AI, then now that information lives on forever in machines or systems and databases. And yeah, that's where it starts getting scary, because that's where things can really change.
Yeah, at the root of most, sci-fi movies about apocalypse, the AI figures out humans are the problem and wipe us out. My
I mean,
brain's
humans
not
have
gonna
figured
do
that
that.
out too, but at least we protect ourselves.
A little bit, yeah, and
There's some
self-preservation.
self
Yeah,
preservation there a little bit, but with
yeah,
machines figured out, we're probably in trouble.
yeah, yeah, a la Skynet. That's gonna be anyway, okay, John, I was gonna let you off the hook earlier, now I'm gonna do it, but do you have anything going on, anything you wanna promote, your social media, anything?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been so busy. I've stopped. I haven't been posting the last
Okay,
couple
okay,
weeks, but
okay.
but you can still, there's still like a
There's
lot of
still a lot of
videos on
content there.
brain dude. Yeah, brain underscore dude,
Yep.
and check that out. And yeah, I think promote this podcast. I think this is a fun podcast for people. I hope so. I hope our listenership will grow, and
If
viewership.
the I know, but if the analytics are right, on Riverside, what we're currently hosting a podcast on, we have more listeners than I thought we did.
Oh, okay,
If those
good.
analytics are accurate, then I mean, we're not where we want to be,
Let's
but we're doing okay.
let's pretend they are accurate.
I'd like to think they are. So,
Good.
for everybody else, thanks for hanging with us. Hopefully, you found this educational. Like, hopefully, you learned something like I did. But if you have questions or thoughts, or again, want to tell me that I'm horrible at this, hit us up on social media. Leave a comment wherever you're listening to the show. If you haven't done it already, like, follow, subscribe to the show, and yeah, check out our website. We don't have any merch. I don't know what we would sell, but you can always go and listen to the show on our website or past episodes on the website. And yeah, I think and going back to getting people to listen, if you are listening to the show and you like the show, tell somebody that you think would get something out of it. I love that we have a core group of people who listen, but spread the word. Tell somebody else, please. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourself, and we'll see you then.
Brain to Sean.